Okay, so here I am out along the hiking trail in the Ben Allen Marsh, and it's a lovely day. It's April 17th actually, 2021. Second year of the COVID. My God, what are we going to do about this? We got to fix this problem, don't we? Absolutely. Got to get rid of the COVID. Everybody needs to get vaccinated. We need to get vaccinated. I need to get vaccinated. During the social isolation, as you can see, there's nobody around me anywhere. It's kind of dead and vacant and a little bit lonely out here. And yet, I'm in my environment. I am exactly where I belong. Kind of lovely, isn't it? Kind of nice. In the background, you can hear the geese. Yeah, the geese are very vocal. Absolutely. It's mating season, breeding season, egg season, soon to be baby season. Yeah, absolutely. So there is that. A question that periodically comes up dealing with particularly young Earth creationists of every sort is, who is Mr. Charles Darwin? And I have been told by a number of creationists, Christian and Muslim alike, that I worship Charles Darwin, that I believe that Charles Darwin has magical powers that allow him to see into the future. And I've even been told that Charles Darwin is alive and well today and still guiding his followers directly. None of which is actually true. It's all nonsense. But then again, dealing with creationism, especially of the young Earth variety, you are going to be dealing with a great deal of nonsense. I have been told that Charles Darwin was everything from a serial adulterer to a rabid homosexual to a communist, and that he personally tutored Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin in the art of murder. Personally tutored them. Wow. I've been told that he killed 200 million people. And one notorious creationist, who I shall not name, Navarro, insisted that he had personally murdered 200 million Christians in his lifetime. That's pretty grotesque, pretty bizarre. Anything that you can or will say accusing him of being a drug addict, of being an inbred hillbilly, of being a drunk, really, it's crazy. Who was Charles Darwin? Well, Charles Darwin was an ordinary man, and nobody thinks he was a god. Nobody thinks that Darwin was a god. Nobody thinks Darwin had magical powers. Nobody thinks that Darwin is alive today. He was an ordinary man, and no, he did not invent atheism. Indeed, atheism was already well established when he arrived, and he himself never arrived there. He never arrived at atheism. He went to his grave believing that there had to be a God. Now, he did go from being a devout Christian to being not a Christian, but still a religious and spiritual person, insisting, even though maybe the Christian version was wrong, there had to be a God somewhere. And there go the geese. Hi. That there had to be a God of some sort, just not the one in the Bible. And no, he did not get converted back by Lady Hope. The Lady Hope myth was made up years after his death by an American preacher who wasn't there. Funny thing about American preachers who weren't there, they always seem to know exactly what happened. Yeah. Charles Darwin was an ordinary divinity student when he boarded the Beagle. And he was recruited because he was a member of the lower nobility, not quite nobility, the gentry. He was a yeoman. That is to say, he belonged to a class of landowners who were wealthy enough that they could afford to rent out their land to tenant farmers. But they weren't given titles. They didn't have noble titles. They weren't knighted. They were not obligated to bring any more than themselves, a horse, and a sword in the event that the realm called upon them to defend the realm. He was a member of the yeomanry, the highest rank you could be without having a title. And this is also why his book, The Origin of Species, is the one that is most famous. That and its biggest and most comprehensive of the three books, written by three separate and distinct individuals, Darwin, Huxley, and Wallace, all of whom stumbled upon sexual selection as the driving force of evolution, more or less independently of each other, all of whom were inspired by Patrick Matthew, who died before any of them published, who was himself a naturalist, an amateur naturalist, who first suggested sexual selection, but he wasn't able to formulate the idea. And of course, we call it natural selection because Darwin, being a member of the upper middle class, was, of course, rather puritanical. And he lived among people who were rather puritanical. He belonged to a puritanical class, the upper middle class, the wealthy but not ennobled class. And these people would never say the word sexual without shocking each other. Oh my God, he said sexual. Ooh, yes. This is literally how the Victorians thought. The Victorian upper middle class thought this way. Yes. And so he used the word natural as a polite euphemism for sexual, which has led to a great deal of confusion among creationists and non-creationists alike. Yes. Artificial selection is still sexual selection, and so it qualifies as natural selection when you're using the word natural as a polite Victorian euphemism for the word sexual. Come on. Yeah. It qualifies. So no, Darwin was not a god. Darwin was not a demigod. Darwin was not a mystic. Darwin has no religious significance to people who understand evolution. He was just one of three guys who figured out sexual selection. One of three. One out of three guys. And he was given priority because he was the richest one there at a time when wealth mattered. Victorian England. Class distinction mattered. And he was a yeoman. Literally the highest rank you could be without having a title of nobility attached to you. So he was given priority, which is why he is the most famous of the trio. But there are also Wallace and Huxley. Take away Darwin, you still have Wallace and Huxley, and you have all the work that has been done since. Because yes, all three men are historical footnotes. We've moved beyond them. We have moved beyond Darwin. We have moved beyond Huxley. We have moved beyond Wallace. We no longer live in the 1860s. Soldiers no longer go into battle with muzzle loaders. The Queen no longer rides exclusively in a carriage, although she does for ceremonial occasions, but otherwise she uses an automobile. And we have things called aeroplanes. It is no longer the 1860s. And so Darwin is a historical footnote. Have a nice day.